Oh, good morning, everyone. We have a pretty full Zendo here and a pretty full virtual Zendo. So hi out there to all of you in virtual Zendo land. It's wonderful to see you. My name is Ryoshin. I'm an assistant teacher here at the Village Zendo. Last Friday was the 29th anniversary of my father's passing. And my brother reminded me, as always, with a text message at 6 in the morning. We always silently honor both of our parents in this way each year. And actually, my very first Dharma talk was case 25 from the Book of Serenity, the rhinoceros fan. And I spoke about my father. One day, Yanguan called to his assistant, "Bring me the rhinoceros fan." The assistant said, "It's broken." Yanguan said, "Well, in that case, bring me the rhinoceros." So my father was quite an ornery rhinoceros at times. I spoke about his brokenness and my brokenness and the brokenness of the world. And in America these days, since the election, it seems to some of us at least that something very precious has been broken. In the not quite 3 weeks that have passed, I've responded with anger. I've experienced moments of fear. And I've wanted to ignore all of it, especially those awful people on the right, and just take care of myself and my loved ones. Su Yang circulated a New Yorker cartoon on the mailing list this week. The image was a patient on the couch talking to their therapist. The caption said, "I want to be in the moment, just not this moment." So it's very apt. We live in deeply unsettling times. We've just seen one of the risks of a democracy come to pass. A majority votes to give power to a leader who has authoritarian tendencies. And the question is, will the center hold? It certainly seems like it's teetering. I know a lot of people on the left feel powerless or exhausted. And for people not on the left, some of them are excited. Some of them are elated. But to me, it seems like they either don't know or aren't paying attention to what's happening. The abnormal has been normalized. And yet, in so many other ways, life goes on. The days are getting shorter. Our Dharma friend gets married. We practice together. We finally get some rain. A glorious 2 days of gray skies and drizzle. The forest is just beautiful in the rain. The bark of the trees turns black. The fallen leaves at this time of year form a carpet of brown. The air is crisp and cool in the mornings. And of course, the holidays are coming. So if we care about the world, what do we do? Sometimes we will find ourselves confused or rattled or angry or even despairing. Causes and conditions have brought us to this point. The world is burning. The billionaires have pushed past the gate and are preparing to ransack the storehouse. In good times we practice. In bad times we practice. We take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Practice helps us see through all of our ideas. We drop our ideas of right and wrong, all of our judgments, all of our stories about who did what, all of the he said, she said, all of the fears about what the future will bring, when we just breathe in and breathe out. No past, no future. We support each other and we support ourselves by practicing. Now, I'm not saying practice is the answer. Practice is not going to solve all of our problems or the world's problems. It's often said that Zen practice accomplishes nothing. This practice is about accepting reality just as it is right now, leaving nothing out. Our practice includes the trees in the forest, the leaves on the forest floor, and Magga. It includes the flowers on the altar and the billionaires at the gate. When we practice, we notice our resistance. I want to be in the moment, just not this moment. We notice our fears. First person I spoke with after the election, a very kind, friendly, open-hearted man, said to me, "Well, at least we'll be in the same camp." I laughed. He gave voice to one of my fears. We notice that this thing called a self is a construction, just a bundle of aggregates. In my case, genes from my father and my mother gave rise to nearsightedness, arthritis, and possible diabetes. A bundle of desires and insecurities and experiences and conditioning formed over 67 years. We let go of some of our attachment to self. We let go to our attachment just a little bit to the narrative that half of this country is good and half of this country is evil. We realize how important it is to be truly present to ourselves, and with others. And we notice where we can be of service, so that when we respond to the causes and conditions of our lives, we are responding from a position of no self, from a position of humility, from a position of clear seeing, which means a position of not knowing, because we don't know what the future will bring. Whatever we do, it's important to start with practice, to be grounded in practice. Now, I find some comfort in history, not because the answer can be found there. Today is not yesterday. Of course, there are lessons that can be learned, but that's not the reason. The reason I find comfort in looking at the history of the world is to see that the human condition has always been one of struggle and difficulty. Why should our condition now be any different? As long as there is delusion, there will be suffering. Read about the Civil War. Read about World War I. Read about feudal Japan when Dogen lived. When has the world ever not been burning? And yet we object. History has many terrible stories, but not in my life. We resist the reality of impermanence. We resist the reality of delusion. The reality that our task is to live in this world, the broken one. I've been reaching out to people to see how they're doing. People on the left, of course, but I've also reached out to a few people that I know on the right. In many cases, not all, they're good, well-meaning people. I can't say this to them, but as I ask questions and try to understand their thinking, it's hard not to feel that they've been played. There's a huge disinformation industry on the right. And that's part of the reason that some of these people are literally living in a different world with different facts than I am. So how do we talk to each other? What's a bodhisattva to do? Well, a friend of mine gave me his answer. He told me, I'm not going to spend the next 4 years letting Trump get in my head. I'm not going to spend my time following all of the court cases, all of the executive orders, all of the people he's hiring and firing. I have no control over SCOTUS, over Congress. It will just drag me down. And I said to him, but you can't ignore the world. My friend said, I'm not going to ignore the world. I'm just going to ignore Trump. I'm going to find something I can do to make a difference in the world. And I'm going to do that. I really like this answer. I'm not saying this is the answer for you. I'm not saying this is the answer for everyone. But I liked his answer. He's going to find something that he can do to make a difference. Maybe you're going to help organize the resistance, and that's wonderful too. We need all of the effort of all of the Bodhisattvas. Reminds me of case 14 of the Blue Cliff Record, Yun Men's An Appropriate Statement. A monk asked Yun Men, "What are the teachings of a whole lifetime?" Yun Men said, "An appropriate statement." You might also say an appropriate response. Shakyamuni Buddha taught for 49 years. There are generations of ancestors whose words have been passed down to us. Are these the teachings of a whole lifetime? Dharma study is valuable. But when we're confronted with a situation in our lives, in our world, the living, breathing, smelly reality of human life, what's an appropriate response? It's up to us to find the most skillful response given the tools that we have at hand. If I need to hang a picture on the wall, I look for a hammer and a box of wall hooks. If I need to gather leaves, I look for a rake or a leaf blower. These are the appropriate tools for the job. What's the appropriate response to the world and to our lives? This includes the question, how do we respond to our families and friends that we disagree with? Another friend said, be patient and be kind. In the commentary on an appropriate response or an appropriate statement, Suetu says, members of the Chan family, if you want to know the meaning of Buddha Dharma, you must observe times and seasons, causes and conditions. This is called the special transmission outside the written teachings, the sole transmission of the mind seal, directly pointing to the human mind for the perception of nature and the realization of Buddhahood. We must observe times and seasons, causes and conditions. We practice, we take refuge, and from this place we act. As I've listened to academics and analysts and people on the left talk about the present moment in the US, they say that the worst way to respond is to give in to apathy, to give in to despair. It almost doesn't matter what you do, as long as you do something. Maybe you respond by volunteering at an animal shelter. If you're in a blue state, maybe you respond by thanking your elected representatives for standing up for us. We need them to stand up. And encourage them to support policies that you believe are right and good. You can be informed and recognize that not every cause you believe in is going to win support in the America we live in, that compromise is necessary, that not every battle is worth fighting, but some battles are. And when you feel safe to do so, you can talk with your family and friends, and your neighbors, and your workmates, and you can listen to them, and you can use right speech to communicate your understanding without presuming it to be the whole story. There are many reasons that disinformation has taken hold throughout the world. So many institutions that we used to rely on are gone. We all live our lives in our little information silos. The left and the right all feel that mainstream media has let them down, which ironically further weakens mainstream media and sends us deeper into our information silos. So one thing we can do is listen to each other and talk to each other. One conversation at a time. We can refrain from demonizing the other. We can search for common ground. We can be a good neighbor. I wanted to title this talk, Be a Good Neighbor. That's my response. It's ironic, but I realized that much of what I'm saying could have been a lesson for children in Mr. Rogers' neighborhood when I was growing up. Be a good neighbor. Not saying it's going to be easy. Our Bodhisattva vow is to save all sentient beings. It means that we vow to live in the world of samsara, the world of constant change, the world of wandering, running around in circles, cause and effect, dukkha. We practice, we take refuge, and we take action. There are as many ways to inhabit the present moment as there are people in the world. The teachings offer us guidance. And as I was casting about for how to talk about this, I discovered a text in the Shobogenzo. And I won't go into it in much detail. I don't want to spend too much time today. But it's, Dogen offered us 4 methods of guidance. With the Bodhisattvas, 4 methods of guidance. In Japanese, it's Bodhisattva Shishobo, chapter 46. And around the time that Dogen wrote this text, he and his followers left Kyoto and moved to a remote region of Japan called Echizen, where they founded Eiheiji. Why did they leave Kyoto? We don't know. There was a great deal of sectarian violence in Japan at the time. Perhaps Dogen and his followers left in response to this violence. Whatever the reason was, it's likely that the Bodhisattva's 4 methods of guidance were written during turbulent times. And they are giving, or generosity, kind speech, beneficial action, and identity action. And they're closely related to the 6 paramitas. Giving means non-greed. And we can give in many ways. We can give our time, our attention, material resources, our organizational skills, without expecting any return. Even to give to yourself is giving. Kind speech means that when you see sentient beings, you arouse the heart of compassion and offer words of loving care. Dogen says if kind speech is offered, little by little kind speech expands. Be willing to practice it. For this present life, do not give up world after world, life after life. Kind speech is the basis for reconciling rules and subduing enemies. Those who hear of your kind speech will be deeply touched. They will always remember it. Beneficial action is to skillfully benefit all classes of sentient beings. That is, to care about their near and distant future and to help them by using skillful means. Dogen says in ancient times, one helped a sick tortoise, another took care of a sick sparrow. Benefits self and others alike. If you have this heart, even beneficial action for the sake of grass, trees, wind, and water is spontaneous and unremitting. This being so, make a wholehearted effort to help the ignorant. There you have it. Even Dogen says it. And identity action means non-difference. The Guanji, a 7th century Taoist text, Dogen quotes, "The ocean does not exclude water. That is why it is large. The mountain does not exclude soil. That is why it is high." It means you cause yourself to be in identity with others while causing others to be in identity with you. Identity action. So this is some guidance from across the centuries from Master Dogen. So I'm going to end today with a poem. Jisei and I, another student here at the Zendo, spent 2 lovely hours in the last week with some of the Bodhisattvas in our Sangha, exploring the Japanese tradition of writing a death poem. And it's a wonderful way to deepen our experience of impermanence. I know Roshi started this tradition here at the Village Zendo many, many years ago. So I started this talk by remembering my father, and I will end with the death poem that I wrote in November of the year 2024, just in case. These poems follow a simple form. The first line is a reflection on our life. The second line is how long we've lived. The third line is how we feel approaching death. And the fourth line expresses our Zen understanding. So I'll read it twice. Tilting at windmills, chasing the moon for 67 years. Now that the autumn winds are blowing, I can see that the moon shines everywhere. Tilting at windmills, chasing the moon for 67 years. Now that the autumn winds are blowing, I can see that the moon shines everywhere.